After one of the worst drops in Bitcoin history and the worst May ever, we're still seeing a lot of indecision in the crypto markets. I'm going to take a look at the top 10 coins by market cap as well as the news and see if we can figure out what's going on. Let's go. What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Please, before we get started, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button right down below. As I mentioned, markets still look indecisive. Very difficult to figure out what's going on with a lot of these coins, including Bitcoin. There are key patterns developing and levels that we need to watch. So I'm going to take a look at the top 10 coins by market cap, excluding Tether and USDC, of course. So 8 coins. And then we're going to take a look at the news. I'm going to look at them on both their Bitcoin and dollar pairs. This is a lightning round, so very fast analysis. First, you can see Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, Cardano, Binance Coin, XRP, Dogecoin, USD Coin, Polkadot, Uniswap. Again, excluding USDT and USDC. Let's start with Bitcoin. Not much to see on the Bitcoin chart. It has been chopping sideways. I've talked about this a lot, but very clearly we have a symmetrical triangle here. Some would view it as a bear pennant. Others would say it's a bit too big. Either way, a break of this descending resistance would indicate that the trend is going to return up. A break of this support here that's ascending would indicate that there's going to be much more downside, even potentially further than the 30,000 lows. That's the pattern that I think everyone is watching. You can see that there's a real reduction in volume here, which is what you expect during consolidation. I would say that the bias would have to be down if you're looking at this as a potential bear pennant, but it could break either way, and ultimately that should decide what the next move will look like. As you know, I really want to see Bitcoin back above 41,986, this 42,000 level. That was the highs from the move all the way up from the previous all-time high around 20,000 and seems to be the key level for me. On the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, I shared this on Twitter as well as in my newsletter. You can see we have this descending resistance right here. We had a clean break of it yesterday, a beautiful candle that closed near the highs, and now we actually have a perfect retest of that level. That does not mean that that will hold, but if this holds, we should be heading back to the highs. You can see key levels marked, but I would imagine that if that support holds, we're going back to 0.082400. This could be an indication that Bitcoin will continue to chop sideways and will continue to consolidate and could give altcoins a little bit of room to breathe, because we all know that Ethereum acts as somewhat of a weather vane for the entire altcoin market. Now let's look at Ethereum on the USD pair. Now we're seeing these patterns forming a lot. Before they looked like inverse head and shoulders with a shoulder here, but they seem to all have sort of hit resistance and come down here. You'll see this pattern across a lot of altcoins, both on their Bitcoin and USD pairs, but we still do have technically a complex inverse head and shoulders, which would basically have two right shoulders. Ultimately, no matter what, we need to see a break of this resistance right here to start to feel bullish on Ethereum on the USD pair. And you can see that based on the depth of this pattern, this would ultimately be the target up here around 4,133. If it breaks this with strength, you want to see volume on that break. Also, you expect quite a bit of resistance in this zone right here. Moving on to ADA. Listen, a lot of these charts are so sloppy, and that's what I want to show you. It's going to be very hard to find trades. That's why I've been sharing very few altcoin charts. Just a lot of indecision after a huge drop on Bitcoin, and then the charts somewhat reset, and you need to see them form up. But ADA still looks good, right? We had this pattern down here. This was the last trade. Huge move up. And now we're seeing consolidation, again, descending volume as price continues to sort of trickle down here. We had the big drop, but now it does look like it's broken resistance and retested it as support. So we would expect to be coming back up here to these highs, probably at least right around 5028. The problem is we're not seeing a real spike in volume. Very slight, but no real spike in volume on the breakout. So I would not be surprised to see this pattern somewhat invalidated, maybe trickle around, go sideways, and form something more clear. When you see a breakout, technically, even though you have the line, you really want to see an increase in volume when it does it. But this does look better than most. It's continued up. ADA, USD, really gross chart, really weird to look at. Not gross because it's bad, just a ton of sideways chop, big move up, huge move down, all kinds of indecision, wicks all over the place. Just a very hard chart to read. Still clear that the $1.50-ish is an important level. And you can see that again, just like on the Bitcoin pair, this does technically have a breakout. It did have a little spike in volume here, but really not much, and seems to still have decreased on the actual break. Either way, technically you have a breakout. I would say that ADA looks better than most for what it's worth. Next coin, Bnb Bitcoin. Now, I had shared this inverse head and shoulders quite a while ago. It did technically break out, and we've come back down and traded around that line quite a few times, retesting it. And now we do seem to have moved above. It's very, very clear here that we have a key resistance at 0.009673, this line right here. Ultimately, we should still be targeting eventually 0.012352 based on the depth of this inverse head and shoulders. But again, the volume profile isn't ideal. I think you really want to just see it above this black line to give confirmation that it's likely to continue up, because this whole area really is the main resistance after the drop. On to BNB USD, looks exactly like that ETH USD chart that I showed before, sort of a complex inverse head and shoulders. Depending if it breaks out, it would give us a target up in these areas somewhere right here. And you can see that 423 will probably be a key resistance, as will this whole area around 500 up to like maybe 510, 520, something like that. But again, these could just be resistance, all these coins, and just continue to drop down. These patterns become invalid. They're not even valid patterns until they have a breakout. They're just ideas. That's so important to stress. An inverse head and shoulders does not exist until it breaks out. It's literally just an idea. You cannot trade it. It may never confirm. But this does look decent if it breaks that line. XRP on the Bitcoin pair, yet another confusing one. We had this macro breakout. This was the pattern we were watching on so many large cap alts when we had that sort of alt season with large caps. Ultimately, there's a couple levels here that you can watch, and then we have this new support. I would not want to be trading below this blue line regardless what happens, but there's very much no clear patterns here. This was going up, huge drop, kind of chopping sideways, head and shoulders-y. Very, very difficult to discern what's going on, but clearly chopping sideways now between key levels. XRP USD, a little more clarity on this. It's trading clearly between $1.80 and this 79-cent level and bounced perfectly there, which you love to see, right? Resistance, resistance, break, never tested, and then tested twice as support with wicks below and closes right on that line and heading up. So XRP actually looks very good here as long as it remains above 79 cents. Also, they have the news that they're somewhat doing very well against the SEC in their lawsuit. Doge Bitcoin, I mean, this chart is so unbelievable when you zoom it out, but you can see we have a key support and a key resistance here. Now, what I don't really love is that generally you don't see a pattern come this close to the apex. You generally see a triangle break out at 60, 70% of the way. That's when you expect it. More often than not, when you see a pattern like this, it kind of leaks out the side and sort of surprises you. But what we may really be looking at here is something more like this, right? A descending wedge. Either way, there's nothing bad here. But if it breaks the support, you could come down here and then head back up. Ultimately, you need to break this resistance and head up. Doge USDT, I shared this in the newsletter yesterday. It was the only thing I shared. It did actually have a similar thing. It broke this resistance and now has retested as support. So if you are a Doge fan, I do not trade Doge up at these prices. I have zero interest. But if you are a Doge fan, this does look like a breakout and retest. Problem is, yet again, no volume. But from a technical perspective, 1, 2, 3, 4 touches as resistance, and then 2 touches now as support. That should theoretically head up, all depending on what Bitcoin does. Next is DOT. Ugly chart, nothing to see here. I don't really even see how you trade this. Big move up, big move down, all kinds of choppy consolidation. I think that as a trader, it's kind of an avoid right now. Easier to find things that might look better if you're even trading at all, which I obviously am not. DOT USD, same sort of inverse head and shoulders with the neckline being right here, needs to break that, and this is the key support. So you want to get above this line. You do not want to break down this support. Looks like all of these other coins. On to Uniswap. Now, Uniswap's a little bit more interesting, I guess. This whole area, I would say, is resistance. This is not a supply zone. It's drawn from here with the bottom, and then this was the high. So I view this entire area as resistance. So ultimately, I think that if you're going to trade Uni, you want to get above that, because that would be above the all-time highs and put you back into price discovery. But it is nice that this coin is pushing so close to that price discovery on the Bitcoin pair when others have seen much, much larger breakdowns. This broke all the way down here and almost has recovered the entire move. And we do have this ascending channel as well, and we're trading above the EQ here, above the top. Ultimately, I think there's nothing to see here unless we get above that and go into price discovery. And Uni on the USD pair also bounced right at a key support. It's very hard to tell, but looks like these are very bullish SFPs right here. 3, wicks that went below, found liquidity, and price moved up. You can see the bearish SFPs that were up here before it headed down, right? Tons of selling, unable to push above those highs, came down. Now we have the lows, unable to push down below those lows, came back up, but in no man's land right now between them. Does not look bad, but I see no reason to enter right here. That is the charts. Let's dive into very quick news and then get out of here. Veteran trader Peter Brandt sees Bitcoin crashing farther after May's 50% drop. Peter Brandt, a veteran financial analyst and trader, is questioning whether Bitcoin has more upside in the near term. Here was his basic premise. Challenge to Bitcoin price historians: in past 10 years since May 2011, please identify a single, even one, instance when a 50% plus correction did not lead to at least a 70% correction, or when a 50% plus correction made a new all-time high within 7 months. But there was quite a few responses. One of the Twitterati responded with 2 instances. March 2020 rebound, where Bitcoin's price recovered to all-time highs above 20,000. 8, if not 7 months after crashing to 38.50 in March. So yes, it was 8 months and not 7 months. And then there was the 2013 bull run that saw the cryptocurrency rising by more than 2,450% 8 months after bottoming out near $45 and 80% overnight crash. The moral of the story is here, whether he's right or wrong, 7 or 8 months, it took 8 months in both of those instances. So if the history is a precedent here, we might be waiting a while to retest the highs, whether we go down again or not. And no surprises there. Basically almost requires a 2x from the prices we've been trading at. Bitcoin price D-Day starts any moment, says trader, as Bitcoin reclaims key level. As I say here, after consolidating in a broad range since hitting 30,000, Bitcoin USD is printing higher lows and lower highs. That's that symmetrical triangle that I showed you. We should see, as I said, a lot of volatility once it decides which way it is going to break. So I generally agree with that. Here we have Bitcoin price bull run starting to look like 2013 after record red monthly candle. Long-term price forecast based on stock to flow remain intact, said Plan B after last month's record red candle. I had an incredible conversation with Plan B. It's on my YouTube. You guys should check it out. Been one of my most popular, if not my most popular podcast ever. He believes that stock to flow is still intact and that this looks more like 2013 than it does like 2018 when the market really crashed, which means that we should see some more upside. You can check out all of Plan B's work to see what he's thinking about that. And finally, Bitcoin price crash isn't over, says JP Morgan strategist. Shocking that one of Wall Street's big banks, JP Morgan, who notoriously hates Bitcoin, thinks that the correction might not be over. I know, hard to believe. But JP Morgan analyst Nikolaos Panagurtsoglou said that a medium-term fair value for Bitcoin now stands between 24,000 and 36,000. He basically pointed to the fact that institutions have not been buying and are not as interested after the huge drop and the energy debates. I guess we're going to see. We have all kinds of opinions here. We will soon see when the symmetrical triangle breaks, maybe, which direction it ultimately takes and who is right. We also may see that symmetrical triangle just slowly break out to the side and nothing happen, because nothing is certain in markets or technical analysis. Once again, I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Check out my newsletter in the description, as well as my sponsor, Femex. Until tomorrow's Chartapalooza live stream. Peace.